Oh, I think that it's very funny that Gary, Do Not God, is trying to suggest that reality is, quotes, not ambiguous, and that deep down all we do is we just need to get rid of, quotes, the bullshit. And if you get rid of all of that, people will just suddenly have, quotes, the facts. It will be all clear to them, and decisions won't be problematic. No, I'm sorry, Gary. You're being dogmatic. You're making an appeal to an authoritative disambiguation. And the very fact that you raise the argument the way you do, the fact that you think you're somehow setting it aside by dismissal, by fiat, this is your attempt to flee from the ambiguity. But perhaps you just don't want to buy that. Why don't I give some cases? Perhaps you could address these cases, and that I'm sure would help illuminate your position and show the weakness of mine. Why don't you do that? And I'm sure people would really be impressed by this. Okay, so let's take some examples. You're walking down the street, Gary, and as you walk down the street, you see a person, and that person is in the ditch, and they look like they're hurt, and they say, "Can you help me?" That situation is ambiguous. You can either choose to help them or not choose to help them. You can claim that they have a warrant on you and you are obligated to help a person in need. And just as much, you can claim, let each person fend for themselves. You, me, all of us, we're never sure if we're underestimating or overestimating our obligations to the larger world. If you're going to simply say, just by fiat, that every man for himself, each person's just looking out for number one, and we have no larger obligation, you are denying the ambiguity of it. If you say that we all have obligations to be completely concerned about other people and we should be just as concerned about other people as we are about ourselves, you are denying the ambiguity. The truth is, it's frickin' ambiguous. You're never sure if you're overestimating or underestimating your obligations. Now, you could try to resolve it by just answering it one way and just simply giving some rule that you think people are obligated or are not obligated to give others. You might try to give some sort of truth conditions. You might try to spell out how exactly you're going to determine whether or not you should or shouldn't, and you're going to try to handle the ambiguity that way. But in a broad, just general sense, there are tons of ways in which life is ambiguous. Now, you said there's just a fact of the matter. Now, are dogs food? Now, you could tell me dogs, in fact, are edible. We, in our culture, don't call them food. Now, is edibility the same thing as food? I think they're different. Yeah, I think they're different, and they're different because the ambiguity is at issue. The point is that not everything edible we call food, and some cultures call dogs food. Others cultures, they say dogs are not food. Whether dogs are food or are not food is ambiguous. Now, if you just try to make an appeal to the case by what's edible or what's not edible, you're missing the fact of culture. Yeah, you're just going to reduce the edible and say that that's what food and isn't food. But there's a different concept there. We have concepts of things that are edible, but we don't call them food. But a dog, right? And now if you say, well, look, a dog isn't food, that's denying the ambiguity. To say a dog is food, that's denying the ambiguity. To just say, okay, well, let's get out of that and let's just make recourse to edible, non-edible. Well, now you're going to gloss over one of the main things of culture, which is culture helps people handle and resolve the ambiguity that's all around them by giving them authoritative disambiguations. That is, the dog either is food or isn't food. Religious systems give authoritative disambiguation. They tell us that we do have certain obligations or don't have certain obligations. The real critical question is, what are our moral obligations to ourselves? Can you dehumanize yourself? Can you let yourself down? Can you undersell yourself? Can you put too much expectation on yourself? Can you over-expect from yourself? I think you can do both. I think you can both underestimate what you're supposed to do with your life, and you can overestimate what you're supposed to do with your life. And all of the facts in the world are not going to make it clear to you. The more information you get, the less sure you're going to be about what you should do. In fact, there's going to be an inverse relationship between amount of information and assuredness in the decision. Yeah, the fact is, whether you want to admit it or not, it's ambiguous. We struggle with the ambiguity, and what happens is people try to flee from that ambiguity by making recourse to some sort of dogmatic, authoritative disambiguation. And it probably comforts people, and it's easy to sit and say, no, there's no ambiguity. We just need the facts, and it's this and it's that. That's bullcrap, man. I can't believe that you can't see that. You're hiding from it. You sound like a very frightened little animal who can't deal with the fact that the world itself is ambiguous. Sorry, that's just how it sounds. Okay.